Hello YouTubers. So today we're going to do an oil change for a 2006 Nissan Pathfinder LE. One key thing to notice about this vehicle is when we have it running, our oil sensor is not working anymore. So as you can see, the vehicle is running, but it's stuck on high. So basically our sending unit is kind of hosed up. So we have a new sending unit for the oil pressure. So we're going to go ahead and install this during this oil change. So as you can see, maintenance due for oil. So we went ahead and waited so that we can install this switch. So it's just the sending unit. We been checking the oil just to make sure there's no issues, and we're going to go ahead and replace it. Let's get started. Okay, so underneath here we have our latch. This releases the hood. And then underneath the grill here, there's going to be, we run our finger, and right here is where it releases. We just push it to the side and lift up. And then we just need to grab the stick over here. Okay, and then we just stick it where it needs to go, up here where this arrow is, and that's kind of basically what's going to hold this up here. So our oil dipstick is here. This is how we check the oil. This is where we're going to fill the oil in. But essentially we need to remove this pan down here to change the oil. So we're going to go ahead and get set up for that. Okay, with this plate removed, we can basically see there's a little kind of a tray that will allow the oil to spill onto this and drip down here. So there's the oil filter there. Okay, so this is our oil pan here. So this is the nut we're going to loosen to drain out the majority of the oil. Okay, this is 14 millimeter. And essentially we're going to break it loose, get our oil pan underneath to catch the oil that comes out. Okay, and there we go. We're going to drain the majority of the oil here. We're going to let this sit for a while, and after we drain out most of this, we're going to go ahead and remove the oil filter next. So we're essentially going to loosen that up, and then we'll pull our oil pan to catch the oil. Okay, this is going to be how we're going to remove the filter. This is going to go on the end of the filter, and then we use a socket wrench to loosen it up. Okay, we have our socket wrench attached, and we're going to go ahead and just start loosening, and then we'll see the oil will start to come out. Once we get it loose enough, we could turn it by hand. So we can remove this. Okay, and once we start loosening this, we're going to get oil coming out of here. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and remove this and let it drain out, and make sure we catch all the oil. Okay. So go ahead and remove that and hold it so that you don't spill it. You want to try to hold the end facing upward as you pull it out of there. it's going to be hard for me to do it here with one hand. So I'm going to go ahead and remove it and let it drain. Okay, so now we're essentially just at a drip. So we can put our plug back in. Okay, and then we're just going to tighten it up just a tiny bit. So it's about 1/8 of a crank. It's hardly anything. If you over tighten it, you might not be able to get it off in the future, so you don't want to over tighten it. And we're going to wipe it down so we can check for leaks afterwards. Okay, now we need to remove the filter. Okay, so there's still going to be some oil left in this filter. Okay, once we loosen it, that oil is going to drip down, as you see here. And then we're going to have to remove it. Okay, and then we're going to set it down here. And then we're going to let this drain a bit. As you can see, it gets a little bit messy here. Okay, so while that is draining, we can prep our new filter. Okay, so we're going to prep our new filter. So essentially, take out our filter, and we take our oil, and we want to make sure there's oil in the filter. So I'm going to fill it up and let it absorb in there. So this way, when we start the vehicle for the first time, we don't have to pump all that oil and run potentially dry for a period of time. It's very important you take a little bit of oil and you run it around the seal. This way, the rubber gasket doesn't fuse to the engine block. I've had that happen in the past, and if you don't know that it's there, it's going to cause an oil leak and then cause you to have some damage to your engine. So you want to make sure that it's well lubricated as well. I'm going to put a little bit more in here. Okay, and we're going to just let that soak in there a bit. And replace the filter in. Put the filter back on. Most of this oil has drained out. So we're going to go ahead and attempt to put our new filter in. It's kind of hard to do with one hand here. Let's see. There we go. So we're going to hand tighten it, and then once it's hand tightened, we're going to wipe it down, and we're going to use our wrench to tighten it on about a quarter turn. Okay, so now we're going to wipe it down. And this is so we could check for leaks later. And ensure we're good. Okay. Now we're going to take our wrench and we're going to tighten it on. Okay. Okay, so we cleaned everything up, wiped everything down. We have our new filter in. There we go. So now we're going to replace this sensor. So here's where we're going to find this guy. So essentially, we need to work our way underneath the vehicle here. Okay. So we have our plug here, and we're going to move up from our plug, and we have kind of a suspension piece here, and then right under here, this is where that guy sits. So it's a 24 millimeter wrench, and we're going to go ahead and remove this. So we'll probably get a little bit of oil that comes out of here as well. So we want to disconnect this existing cable out of here. We may need to push it in with a screwdriver to pull it out. So essentially we should be able to push this piece in. Okay, we push this little release in and pull. So I'm going to have to use two hands to do this and probably put a screwdriver on there to pull that out. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this out and then use my wrench to remove this. Okay, so we were able to pull that guy off, and I'm going to use a socket. This is 24 millimeter. Okay. Okay, so I essentially got my, without an extension, seemed to be the best way to get this out. So I have a little bit of room. Okay, that seems to be about good to hand remove it. It's pretty dirty. There we go. And as I mentioned, there'd probably be some oil in there. So I'm going to put a little bit of a gasket on the threads just to ensure that we don't leak out of this thing. We're going to Teflon tape this instead of using the Loctite that we used previously. Alright, so I'm just going to run it around here a few times. Okay, so essentially that should probably give us what we need as far as a good seal. But I'm going to still use some of this silicone gasket maker. And it shouldn't take much. And we're probably not going to get a really good seal with the Teflon tape over it, but we're just going to do it like this. Okay, just put a dab on there. And then just kind of roll it into that area there. Okay, I'm going to get it off the threads here as much as I can. Alright, we'll get a paper towel and wipe it down a little bit, just so there's not too much of it on the threads here. So this is kind of where it's going to butt up to the pan in there on the engine, and that's kind of where we want the seal to be. Whoa! Alright, so let's go ahead and install the new one. Okay, so we got him back in there, and now we're just going to tighten this guy on. So we essentially got it tightened. We don't want to overdo it for this either. So we tighten it only until it's snug, and then about a quarter turn or so. And again, we're going to need to check that there's no leaks from here after we fill the vehicle with oil, and we'll start it up. Okay, so we want to reconnect our connector, like so. Hopefully this is not blurry. Now we're ready to fill the vehicle up with oil. Here we are at the top of the vehicle. So this is our oil cap, where we fill. And to stay as clean as possible, we're going to grab a funnel. Put a funnel there. And then start putting our oil in. This is going to take 5.38 quarts of oil. We'll stop there and we'll give it a check. So we can pull our dipstick out, which is yellow. And we're just going to wipe it off the first time. And then we're going to reinsert it. Okay, so essentially we need it, this is the high and this is the low. We need it in between these two. So I'm going to go ahead and try this again. Here we go, we're like right at the high point here. So we're going to check it again. We're going to give it a start and check it again. After we start it, we'll turn off the engine to check it out. Don't forget to put your cap back on. It's easy to forget. Okay. Okay, so we have our new oil pressure sensor in place, but let's see what we get. So initially it's looking good. Okay, now we're getting some wavering here. It's starting to drop a bit more. So essentially what happens is it'll drop once it warms up a bit and the RPMs drop. It's going to go all the way down, and then we're going to see the oil light come on. And essentially, even at driving it at 2,000 RPMs, it stays at the low oil point. So I don't have reason to believe at this point that the issue is similar to the one that seems to be posted about some, what do they call them? They're channels for oil pressure inside of the inner, where the timing chain goes. So essentially they're saying Nissan's have a known issue, the V6s particularly, where that particular gasket that's in there ends up deteriorating and causing oil pressure issue. So this doesn't necessarily seem to be the same symptoms. It just seems to be the oil pressure always stays low, no matter what. So I can give it some RPMs here, it'll go up, and then it's just going to go back down. And it'll go so low that the oil light will stay on pretty much the whole time unless you're over 2,000 RPMs. This is the original one that we removed, which stopped functioning. Everything was high pressure when this one was in. It wasn't really leaking per se, but you know, it started getting discolored and stuff. So in any case, I had bought this new one. This was the one I purchased. It came from eBay. It was 20 bucks. And we're having the symptoms as we see on the vehicle now, with low oil pressure now is the issue. So this is the one I actually bought from Nissan. So there's a couple things different on this. It indicates it's made in China here, whereas the eBay one said made in Japan. So essentially what I'm reading is basically these ones you purchase online really cheap are just garbage. And this is probably some fake label that they print on it. This is the genuine Nissan part, and it was $110 for this sensor. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one in, and hopefully this resolves our problem. And essentially it's just a bad sending unit, a bad pressure sensor. Here it comes. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and try to put the new one in. Oh, right all over the phone. Good job, Jeff. Alright, let's go ahead and start her up. Alright, I'm going to let this idle a bit. It looks like it's holding steady. Not really seeing any fluctuations, so I'm happy about that. We're going to let it idle and warm up, and then we're going to give it come back and check it again, just to make sure we're still okay. Okay, Okay, we've been idling here for about 2 minutes and we're still holding steady. I'm going to go ahead and put it in drive to bring the RPMs down. And it looks like we're holding steady, so I'm happy with this. So the moral of the story is, if you're buying some cheap parts, buyer beware. Make sure what you're getting works. So obviously that eBay part was inferior and was inaccurate. I doubt I'll get a refund. Like I said, it was 20 bucks though, so it's not that big of a loss. So good luck, and hopefully you guys, if you have the same problem, this video helps you as well.